Story 1. Unfortunately, it is not surprising. Accountability should be impartial. I doubt there will be any consequences, and if there are, it will likely involve a scapegoat. The next Oliver North will probably earn millions from a book and talk show tour after being pardoned. I have no faith in the executive branch. The rules apply to others but not to them. An active duty member would already be on their way to Leavenworth after being detained without bail before trial. Story 2. Any service member who engaged in actions like this would justifiably be incarcerated, pending a short trial with a guaranteed conviction leading to decades in prison. Discussing and planning current military operations must occur in a sensitive compartmented information facility, utilizing secured networks and electronic communications specifically designed for this purpose. Cell phones are prohibited in a sensitive compartmented information facility. The fact that this conversation occurred outside a sensitive compartmented information facility on ostensibly unsecured personal cell phones, using an unapproved and unsecured application, and that a reporter was included in the thread likely violates numerous laws. It has been noted that some individuals in the chat were outside the United States, with one reportedly in Moscow, Russia. This is significant because, amid other concerns, there is a United States embassy in Russia, which certainly has a sensitive compartmented information facility and secured communication methods where this conversation could have taken place. Story 3. I spent 8 years in naval intelligence, and the reason I can reply to this post is that I never engaged in such actions. If I had, I would certainly be in prison. So yes, it is quite infuriating. Story 4. I'm not sure which is worse: the incompetence or the fact that none of those involved or their superiors have apologized or accepted any blame. Instead, they are deflecting and criticizing the reporter and the organization he works for. Story 5. It is a serious breach of operational security and demonstrates a significant level of incompetence on the part of the team of cabinet-level officers, none of whom recognized the problem until informed by the media. Worse still, 2 of the violators who testified under oath yesterday claimed that the message contained no classified information, when in fact it did. They are either ignorant or deliberately lying. Story 6. My brother-in-law formerly worked at Central Command in a senior role. He was never political. His statement reflects a complete dismantling of our national security with unwitting disregard and ignorance for their lack of understanding in their positions. We are less safe and less powerful, which directly puts our troops' lives at risk. If Hegseth doesn't get fired, then the administration sets a precedent for totalitarianism, indicating that they are above the law. Story 7. I once reprimanded a fellow non-commissioned officer for compromising operational security for a mission I was on, after the fact. Had he committed such an egregious act, I would have secured my weapon in the armory after our discussion. Story 8. We are being led by inexperienced individuals who make impulsive and overly emotional decisions, lacking long-term strategic planning skills. They are underqualified and incompetent for their roles. Story 9. I had a top-secret/sensitive compartmented information clearance. I left the service 8 years ago. If I mention the name of any of the programs I worked on, just a name chosen at random to avoid indicating what the program is about, and if I shared it online in a group chat or even out loud to my spouse and the military found out, I would be arrested within 48 hours. I would face charges and sentencing for it. The things I worked on aren't nearly as sensitive as the issues they were discussing. Remember the controversy about Hillary's emails? This is orders of magnitude worse. That said, I would argue it's not as bad as former President Trump keeping those documents in a Mar-a-Lago bathroom. Story 10. I'm not who you're asking, but I really want to know who they were trying to add and mistakenly included the journalist. Like who got accidentally replaced. Story 11. Less safe. As a Navy radioman/information technology specialist from back in the day, strict circuit discipline and guarding of top-secret/top secret information was drilled into us, and the punishment was severe if we ever leaked information or spoke out of turn. We would find ourselves in serious trouble for such actions. The current administration is failing on all levels. Story 12. I am a former Navy officer. I was in a school where a fellow officer misplaced a manual classified as secret for a few hours. It was found in the classroom. It had fallen behind the filing cabinets. We all knew that this lapse would probably end his career. This leak does not concern me any more than having a president who had boxes of classified materials in the bathroom of his house. Leadership sets the expectations. I understood that the attitude of treating classified documents as trivial would lead to security lapses. The amount of classified materials that goes through the White House makes it inevitable that some of it will mistakenly end up in the personal files of a departing president. I do not like that, but it is inevitable. What upsets me is keeping the materials when the mistake is realized. Story 13. Trump does not care about the active duty military or veterans. It appears that those in leadership positions are either dangerously incompetent or indifferent. People are the most important part of any organization, and if you blatantly ignore basic principles of communication security, you are knowingly putting those individuals at greater risk than necessary. In my opinion, this is unforgivable. I have been out of the military for over 20 years. Even during my service, I was skeptical about the leadership for reasons I will not detail here, but I did not have such a low opinion of those in charge as I do now. Story 14. It illustrates another crack in the armor of our democracy. One side appears to be so ignorant and indifferent that it poses an existential threat to the safety of the country. On the other side, there is a group of people who are so inept and passive that they are merely standing by, holding a bucket of water and watching it all burn. This security breach is a criminal act on par with treason. People need to be held accountable. Some may even need to serve prison time. I am terrified that there may not be an inquiry or an investigation, let alone charges. I do not want to fight against this chaos or participate in conflicts led by individuals who are inadequate in their roles and care so little about the integrity of our armed forces. I am incredibly disappointed by the response to this level of incompetence. Democrats need to step up, become more aggressive, and take proactive measures. We must stop allowing this to happen. If incidents do occur, we must not let those responsible evade accountability. Story 15. As a veteran, I am extremely angry, but merciful. I believe this should result in multiple individuals sentenced to life terms in Leavenworth, at a minimum Hegseth and Waltz. However, I would not be saddened if they faced the firing squad. This is not an exaggeration. Now more than ever, operational security is absolutely critical. Lives depend on it. It is nothing short of a complete betrayal for the leadership to be so dismissive of this very important concept. The rank and file should take action against these individuals for the good of the country. Story 16. I received the maximum punishment possible just for having my phone when I shouldn't have. There should be consequences. Story 17. As a veteran, I can confirm that this information is classified. It is not a complete strike package. Even a secret classification indicates a possible loss of life if the information falls into the wrong hands. There is no denying that it could have resulted in loss of life. It has now been confirmed that the texts have been released by The Atlantic. The inclusion of a journalist, whether intentional or not, does not affect the classification. The issue lies in the use of informal channels of communication when there are approved methods for this type of information. The intentional circumvention of official records is frustrating. Nothing is likely to happen as a result. Story 18. If I did something like that when I was there, I would be on trial. It is astonishing how reckless that leak was. Story 19. Ex-Royal Navy here, not US. If I had leaked anything remotely close to that, I would lose my job immediately and face imprisonment. The incompetence is utterly remarkable. Basic issues persist. If no action is taken against them, it is a clear sign that the administration has overstepped and needs to be stopped by any means necessary. The power lies with the people to address the situation. Unprecedented. Story 20. It's not the first time something like this has happened. I was there when the Air Force Chief of Staff was fired during Operation Desert Shield and Operation Desert Storm. I just retired before the nuclear incident. We need to adjust plans, hold those who contributed to the situation accountable, apologize, and move on. Story 21. Anyone at any level of the military would recognize the seriousness of a court-martial for this, unless you are at the very top. Story 22. It was a high level of incompetence when it happened, and the reaction is equally severe. If it were a Biden or Obama official, there would be an outcry calling for prison time. Story 23. I would be in Leavenworth if I did anything close. What concerns me more is that using signals must have been normal operations prior to this. Operators are far less safe around the globe. Everyone in that call should be impeached and prosecuted. Story 24. You have to remember that the Make America Great Again base is not aware of the magnitude of the situation. They are still trying to figure out why they haven't received a tax break yet, as well as recalling if they spent the night with their sister. Story 25. It infuriates me. When I served, I had a top-secret/sensitive compartmented information clearance. We were made constantly aware of operational security and how vigilant we had to be. We were also reminded of the penalties for leaking classified information. A leak of this magnitude would have meant prison for those who leaked it. Now nothing happens. It's just another brick in my anger towards this administration. They are incompetent. Story 26. Former United States Air Force pilot with some Air Operations Center war planning experience. At this point, I believe their incompetence and jingoism make it surprising if they do not accidentally lead us into a conflict or into a capable war that we are not prepared to win before this administration is replaced. Story 27. The current administration is made up of individuals who have no idea what they are doing. I keep expecting Hegseth and Brett Kavanaugh to host a large gathering to raise money to fund the government. Maybe that is what is planned for the Easter egg roll, as they are currently looking for sponsors. America has been less safe since January 20th, 2025. Our military service members will be put in harm's way, and many will die, primarily due to incompetent leadership from the White House. Any adult who would have been in that room has been fired. Any competent, experienced voice has been silenced. I see it as a catch-22. We will be going to war, and we will be on the wrong side, but with such incompetence at the helm, we will be defeated. This may be good for the world and the human race, but it is bad for our troops. Story 28. The Trump administration is weakening our military power in multiple ways. I can only see it as intentional. Trump is a traitor. Story 29. The part that bothers me about this is that I was almost sent to Leavenworth for an information security violation that, when compared to this situation, is closer to looking at my non-commissioned officer in charge the wrong way. Story 30. I recall a time during basic training when I was run down and tired. Two gentlemen came by to pull me out for my security clearance interview. We sat in what I would describe as an interview chamber, gray and dingy as expected. They grilled me for about 30 minutes, asking if I would ever take bribes, among other questions. The implication was clear. If I was caught breaking the code of secrecy in any way or if I lied to them, the consequences would be severe. For me, it worked. Even being in the same room with this situation made me slightly nauseous. To see these individuals casually break the rules or make mistakes without facing consequences is, frankly, insulting. Story 31. No, seriously. How has the military police not intervened and placed handcuffs on these individuals? They are completely endangering our national security over text messages. This is a joke, a bad dream, or both. Either way, I'm not laughing and I want to wake up. Story 32. My brother was in the Navy for 20 years. He would be in a prison cell somewhere with a black bag over his head if he had been involved with this. It doesn't matter who is in the White House. This is a blatant disregard for long-standing security protocols. Against all odds, we continue to find new ways to embarrass ourselves on the global stage. Story 33. I would be concerned not only about the intelligence breach, but also about the discussions on how to extort money from allies to cover United States expenses. This is a way to lose friends and alienate people, a lesson in political strategy. Story 34. Trump is a disaster for our military and foreign policy. He is setting the military back decades. Story 35. There's a question that I don't see anyone asking. Sure, Hegseth added a journalist from The Atlantic by mistake, but I think a more important question is who did he intend to add instead of the journalist? Story 36. I am not worried about the leak itself. I am more concerned with the number of spies that Russia is able to implant into our government. Additionally, regarding the cybersecurity situation, former President Trump has weakened us, and there is no telling what foreign countries are doing and implementing into our systems. Story 37. You would be in serious trouble for communicating off the books with a military colleague about a planned road move involving weapons for weekend reserve training. Discussing an upcoming kinetic operation against targets in a foreign country is beyond comprehension. Story 38. They are testing the limits of what they can get away with. Next time it may be something more serious. Before we know it, they will be able to do whatever they want. Story 39. I'm glad I'm out of the services. An administration of traitors and incompetence. Can you imagine troops in Greenland? It's absurd. But Hillary and her emails. Story 40. Non-military here, but I come from a military family. Since Donald Trump's first announcements in 2015, he has been shockingly disdainful of the military, prisoners of war, and Gold Star families. I am astonished that any former or serving member would support him, or that their families would support him. His current cabinet is made up of individuals lacking competence and integrity. If I were serving, I would want to leave, not out of concern for my safety, but because the chances of him involving the armed forces in a dishonorable cause seem very high. Story 41. Nothing happened when Trump showed classified documents at his home in Florida to civilians. Why do we think his administration would be any different? They are not competent enough to figure out how to communicate with each other in a secure manner and probably don't even realize they should. Story 42. Background of why I am upset on the matter. I am a veteran of the United States Air Force with over 8 years of service. I worked in the radio information technology field and dealt with communications security, encryption keys. I worked with special tactics on my last assignment. While preparing for a joint exercise, I made the mistake of transmitting confidential material over an unsecured line. This mainly involved a communications plan of frequencies to be used by us and our joint allies. It was not classified, just confidential. I took full responsibility and was ready to accept any punishment, including preparing for an Article 15, a reduction in rank from E5 to E4, and additional duties. Fortunately, I was only removed from that trip, received a letter of reprimand, had to write several standard operating procedures for improvement, and dealt with personal depression for a year afterward. I have been frustrated ever since the former president mishandled documents and now this situation. There should be zero tolerance, as I was fully aware of my mistake and was prepared to face the consequences. I know my commander could have sent me to jail, and I would have understood. He chose not to. However, it is clear that these individuals have known and were briefed that Signal has been effectively banned since 2020, as we prohibited its use internally while I was in service. They should step down before facing removal. I hope they receive appropriate consequences because all the time I spent building relationships with foreign military forces through joint operations is being undermined. They are realizing that the United States cannot be trusted with sensitive matters right now or in the future. Story 43. Considering each of these people knew that using an unsecure messaging platform like Signal is against the law, why aren't all of them being fired? Story 44. I feel like the people in uniform are once again pawns in a pile of nonsense. None of our pilots were shot down, which is fortunate, but using an unsecured platform among senior leadership is a significant risk taken for no good reason. Everyone involved should be held accountable. People should lose their positions. Secretary of Defense Hegseth should be escorted out of his office and told to never return. We need competent leaders who care about the lives they command as well as the lives they are asking others to take. I do not want to see us embroiled in another war just because someone thought it was a good idea to have one. There are many ideological fault lines at play in this administration, and who knows which one will trigger a conflict. If senior leadership is incompetent, willing to lie to oversight committees, and refuses to accept its mistakes, people will needlessly lose their lives, and this country and its citizens will be less safe. Story 45. The military leans Republican, so I guess they are okay with strategic, highly classified plans being leaked to journalists before a campaign. That's just Pete being Pete. Story 46. They are unsafe. Many of our military personnel will die at Trump's expense. All for nothing. Not a single person will be lost for the betterment of our country, just collateral damage in Trump's delusions. Story 47. I am and always will be proud of my military service, having served 6 years in the United States Marine Corps. However, I am currently prouder of the fact that my service is in the past. I am no longer subject to potential illegal orders from the chaos of the Trump administration. Story 48. Doesn't make me feel less safe. But we have been hearing about Hillary's emails for years, so I expect heads to roll from those same Republicans. It's not going to happen, but it's what should happen. Story 49. Trump was recorded sharing classified documents with unauthorized personnel. He had top secret/sensitive compartmented information documents in his house. This does not surprise me. What is surprising is that he was not included in the chat group. The commander of the military is being left out. Story 50. I served 8 years, received an honorable discharge, and collected a few medals and commendation letters along the way. I would definitely go absent without leave under this administration. They have no respect or regard for our service members. They are not serious individuals. Story 51. I worked in an intelligence-related field where I would have faced severe consequences for even minor mistakes. If you are high enough in the hierarchy, it seems you can use an illegal server or discuss operational security and classified information on non-secure applications with no major repercussions. Story 52. I'm out now, but it concerns me that individuals casually release information that could compromise their lives and act like it's no big deal. When their group does it, that is. Story 53. Failure to adjudicate these crimes gives everyone in prison for these crimes the power to appeal. Hello, Snowden. You can probably come back now. Story 54. This is a significant mistake. If I or any of my fellow soldiers made this error, we would face serious consequences. I hope that accountability is taken for those responsible, but I am doubtful. Story 55. We are far less safe now than ever before, due to individuals who have worked tirelessly to undermine every safeguard we have strived to maintain and defend. Every person involved in that chat should face the same legal consequences anyone else would for disclosing classified information, particularly to a member of the media. Story 56. I think it's a stretch to call anyone in that leaked thread military. I guess Tulsi is kind of because of her time in the reserves, but most of them are not military. If it comes out that it was all legitimate, and our government officials are using Signal to communicate things like this, I am even more concerned than I was before about where we are headed in the United States. They have secure systems they could use. Not using them reeks of something suspicious going on. Every day when I read the news, I wonder what is happening. Then the next day, I get surprised yet again. Story 57. As someone who spent their career in intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, it is incredibly frustrating to see what is happening. I know individuals who had their careers ended for minor mistakes. What has occurred with this Signal chat issue is a major failure from everyone involved. Each of them should be held accountable. However, we know that likely nothing will be done. Story 58. I'll copy and paste a comment I made regarding Pete Buttigieg and his response to this incident. I think Pete echoes something very important. I was also in the military for about 7.5 years. I had access to secret information, which is not as guarded as top secret and compartmentalized information. If anyone below the rank of 06 mishandled top secret intelligence, there would be an investigation by the chain of command. Depending on your rank, the consequences could vary from reduction in rank to non-judicial punishment or jail time. If this doesn't warrant an investigation, then our nation's domestic and foreign security is in jeopardy. Story 59. I didn't need this to know it was going to be a mess. I don't feel any safer. No one should. We should just be embarrassed. Story 60. A veteran who dealt with classified cargo, documentation, and signals. Had I done anything like this, I would have been promptly arrested and still be serving time. I have been amazed over the past 5 years at the brazen violations of protocols and the lack of punishment for it. Any veteran worth their salt would be frustrated. It demonstrates how flawed our justice system is and how it operates in a two-tiered manner. One for low-level service members and disadvantaged individuals, and another for the ultra-wealthy. My question for the veterans excusing this behavior is, why doesn't it upset you? Why doesn't the lack of accountability make you angry? Before you respond with criticisms of politicians, let me clarify. I disapprove of them as well. Why is it so difficult for you to call out their misconduct? Is it just blind loyalty? I will never understand the reverence for politicians. It's perplexing. Story 61. I am a former naval aviator, specifically flying the F-18. It may sound silly to say this, but when I read through the details and saw specifics about when F-18s would be striking, it made my stomach turn. Having flown several combat missions, I felt uneasy and a bit scared. While I understand we were always relatively safe in the air and have little to complain about compared to those on the ground, the thought of the enemy knowing where I will be, when I will be there, and what I will be doing is alarming. Knowing that I still have to go and do it anyway is deeply unsettling. Story 62. Operational security and need to know were ingrained in us since basic training. I only worked on the top secret/sensitive compartmented information equipment, and I was terrified of making a mistake. I knew someone who accidentally took a work laptop off base and faced hard labor while awaiting a dishonorable discharge. Such carelessness puts many people in danger. Those responsible should resign or face legal consequences. It is astonishing that a journalist is more concerned about our national security than the Secretary of Defense. Story 63. It is not just the incompetence. It is the total lack of accountability and responsibility for errors. This means they have no remorse for their actions, have learned nothing from them, and will continue to engage in behavior that jeopardizes United States security and the lives of service members. They justified their actions by claiming encryption was standard practice, accused others of bias, denied the confidentiality of the information, and offered confusing explanations such as claiming they couldn't recall specifics or asserting that it wasn't a war plan. This behavior is unacceptable. Story 64. You might want to ask if they support the current administration first. I have observed that if someone views the president as being sent by God, then it matters little what laws are being broken. Story 65. As a non-American, I believe you should be disappointed in your leadership. J.D. Vance is misleading by claiming the information was exaggerated. How can you, as an American, read this and feel content? What happened to being the greatest country in the world? You are allowing these individuals to make fools of you while you engage on social media. Honestly, shame on you. Story 66. At least the first Trump administration had some reasonably competent people. This time, those guardrails are gone and unqualified individuals are in charge. Story 67. Chill out, dude. Obviously, they are going to change the date and times for the actual mission execution. Story 68. Canada discussed the concept of setting an example for others. You cannot use a superior's mistakes or failures to escape charges, punishment, or career consequences. Yet, as a senior leader, you can engage in such behavior without facing repercussions. This creates a paradox similar to a catch-22, reflecting the troubling situation at the senior leadership level in your country. Story 69. While I think this is a significant issue, I believe it is just background noise to something more important happening in the background. Story 70. The U.S. military is allowing Trump to take this action. Where I live, the military fully supports him. There is no middle ground. The military admires and reveres Trump. I was involved, but now I'm not. My experience includes both active duty and retired service members who support Trump. Story 71. Makes me wonder what other group chats those individuals have, and what other information they have shared with members they probably don't even consider are present. Story 72. Visit the Conservative Forum. I'm sure the talking points about how this is all the fault of Kamala Harris and her group of transgender individuals and underpaid strawberry pickers will surface shortly. Story 73. The act itself is unacceptable, but the dismissal by everyone involved is infuriating. The individual responsible lacks understanding of operational security and may put lives at risk. His incompetence is more concerning than simply not knowing the rules. Story 74. Not only would a peasant be in prison for this, but they would also be a case study incorporated into future operational security online training. Story 75, former submarine radio man. I would be very upset about this operational security breach. There is no tolerance for such actions. Story 76, just makes all the cyber awareness training feel pointless. Did you complete your general mandatory training, Mr. President? Story 77, how do we know it was a mistake? Perhaps it was done purposely. If you have individuals in positions to undermine your country's government, then this is to be expected. Not only are these individuals putting lives at risk, but they are also actively robbing and defrauding citizens. True Americans must declare their independence and list their grievances. That is what the Declaration of Independence was all about. Story 78. Trump has never been able to execute anything without facing failure, and those who admire him in Washington, D.C. even more so. None of this is surprising to anyone. Story 79. I had a price put on my head by Vladimir Putin himself. Barack Obama gave me everything I needed to survive in Afghanistan. I was blown up 4 times and survived, and I always had support when things got tough. When Putin did it again under Donald Trump, there was no response. Even the most biased army soldier is feeling it right now. Story 80. Trump and Biden left classified documents in their homes, and nothing happened. The Secretary of Defense and others included a reporter in a war plan group chat on an unsecured platform and received a stern reprimand in the Capitol. As a low-ranking enlisted member, I know I would face serious consequences, including the possibility of prison time. Claiming I wasn't aware of the policy would likely worsen my situation. Rules for them, not for me. Story 81. I had a top-secret clearance in the Air Force because I was in security forces and was stationed at a personnel reliability program base. If one of us lost our nuclear weapon booklet, we faced serious consequences. It was just a simple booklet with code words and different bomb types in it. Someone needs to be held accountable, and everyone who is lying also needs to be held accountable. Story 82. As a retired officer with prior enlisted time, a TS/SCI holder, and a chief security officer on a warship, there is no amount of rage I feel right now. This is especially concerning considering how many sailors faced captain's mass or worse during my 21 years for taking home a piece of documentation. One sailor faced consequences simply because he was so excited that his birthday was posted to it. I hope this administration faces justice. Unfortunately, as previous administrations have shown through their actions, the only outcome may be a further decline into a collapsed world order. This situation is extraordinary, but I'm not surprised. Story 83. Maybe it's another distraction to prevent us from thinking about the big picture. Donnie the distractor, ensuring our minds are focused on trivial matters. Story 84. As a young private first class in a challenging unit, I couldn't really care. Yes, it's problematic, but we as Americans put these people in a position of power. That's on all of us collectively. I know if I did the same, I'd be facing consequences at Fort Leavenworth. Story 85. As a former clearance holder with extensive experience standing in front of important doors, I can confidently say I would not have seen daylight again if I had engaged in such behavior, let alone continue to maintain a clearance. Story 86. I'll put it this way, you can be reprimanded for walking and eating at the same time. Imagine how you would be treated for leaking classified information in such an environment. Story 87. It is incredibly frustrating. They drill into our minds the importance of holding each other accountable and provide countless training sessions on safeguarding classified information. It is even more frustrating because we all know that nothing is going to happen. If one of us had allowed that to occur, we would be in jail immediately. Story 88. I am frustrated that these individuals discussed sensitive material over an unsecured line. They are downplaying the seriousness of this situation to a dangerous level, which could set a precedent if left unpunished. There is also a trend of shifting blame or outright lying to absolve themselves of responsibility. Sadly, I am unsurprised, as many of these individuals are appointed based on their alignment with certain political agendas rather than their qualifications. I recently retired and still have many friends in the military. I understand that death is a possibility during war, But if any service member dies because of negligence like this, it would be completely unjustifiable. The fact that my friends are still in the military makes this even more real to me. Story 89. This question is asking whether the leak makes military members feel more or less safe. The comments do not seem to be relevant to the actual question. I would like to see the responses to the question being asked. Story 90. Ex-military, but not American. I am amused that this happened but not surprised. At least when war occurs between the United States and Europe, we will be able to see their plans a week in advance on the internet. Story 91. I spent some time in the Army Signal Corps, and we lost a communication security device in the field during a training exercise in South Korea. We were stuck in the field for an extra month searching for that device, and eventually 2 officers were relieved of duty because of it. These individuals should face consequences similar to anyone else in the military who would have done the same thing. Story 92. Information is classified because its release has the potential to damage national security. When events like this occur, they put personnel and operations at risk. It endangers fellow military members, including personal friends and acquaintances. Setting aside political concerns, I am focused solely on this issue. Those responsible need to be held accountable. Story 93. They should go to prison, and as additional punishment, they should have to take the Uncanny Valley operational security training every day they're there. Story 94. The simplest way to understand it is that if you are running an organization governed by a different set of laws, then you should also be subject to those laws. Story 95. I have been frustrated with this entire administration. There have been numerous hires based on diversity, equity, and inclusion principles that appear undeserved. I knew it was only a matter of time before they made a significant mistake. I did not expect it to happen so soon. What is interesting is that on the conservative forum, there is widespread dissatisfaction with this situation. This is the first time I have visited and have not seen any support for the Make America Great Again movement. They are also unhappy about this. Story 96. I'm exasperated and exhausted. This was criminal negligence at best. This has become the norm for this administration. Remember the classified cover sheets at Mar-a-Lago? This is information relevant to the national security of our nation, yet it is handled on an unsecured network in a foreign country using a third-party application, despite the fact that we guard it in accordance with Department of Defense Directive 5210.56. I checked my social media, and the supporters of the former president I served with are quiet for now, while those who are not silent are posting memes mocking the situation. So, it's just another day. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.